Yeah, my name is Gary Ware, and I'm the founder of a company called Breakthrough Play. And it's my mission in life to help all kinds of people use the power of play to help them be more confident, more creative, better communicators, and more importantly, bring back joy into their lives. Because for me, it wasn't always that way. So, one of the things I remember, especially after graduating and jumping into my career, I had this belief that play was something that kids did. And if you played as an adult, you were goofing off or you were, just wasting time. And it was my goal to be successful. And I had this mission. I was like, all right, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to get a job here. I'm going to work up the ranks there. And I'm going to blah, 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 all that stuff. I had this plan. And the reason why I had that plan is like, well, that's how you be happy, right? You be successful and then happiness will follow. Well, I was wrong. So, just fast forward, I'm in my career and I'm working for this large advertising agency, digital marketing agency, and I was a director. And I was one of the youngest directors on the staff. And that was like, thank you. I was like so honored to make it up that, up that ladder. And it was because I hustled and I was really good at my job. I wasn't a jerk, but I found myself getting burnt out a lot. And I just thought that's what you did, because anytime I go to networking events, you talk to people, they're like, oh, how's it going? Oh my God, I am so busy.
Everyone is like that.
Everyone is so busy. Oh my God, I am so busy. Let me tell you about how busy I was. And it was almost like...
And if you weren't busy, it's like weird.
Exactly. And so for me, there was a few things. That, I was like, well, I need to be busy. And then two, I wasn't a good leader. I was a leader, like I was more of a boss. And then I was telling people what to do, but they weren't necessarily doing it how I wanted it. And then it was more this mindset of like, it's just easier. Let me just do it myself. And then I would just take on more than I should. And then I think I was trying to prove to people that I can do it. So I had this proving ground mindset. Like I saw the world as a proving ground. Like I need to make it and I have to do all these things. And I found myself getting burnt out a lot. And it was really interesting because on the surface, if you looked at all the stuff I had a great job. At the time I was, I was married. I had just gotten married. I was making more money than I've ever had. Me and my wife, we were going to buy a house. Like that was our goal, like next house, check. But I was miserable, but I was ashamed to admit it because I'm like, I have no reason to be miserable. I just didn't feel fulfilled. I was always tired. And it was like one of those things like on your phone, like when your phone you need a new phone, you charge it, and then by lunchtime it's already at 30%. You're like, that's how I felt in my body. But yet I still worked my butt off, and it was my secret that I'm just going to just live with it. And then, luckily for me, I found something that changed everything. And it was something that I almost didn't go to. It was an improv class. See, I wanted to be a better leader. And so I was like, all right, what do I need to do? And so I started taking classes. I started finding mentors. And a mentor of mine said, well, you need to be a better public speaker. If you're going to be a leader, you need to be able to communicate in a way that you can influence people to, do things that they need to do. You need to inspire people. I took a Toastmasters class. Hated it. Oh my gosh. It was great for foundation because I learned about the basics of public speaking. I learned about sentence structure. I learned about tone. I learned about body language. I learned about all this stuff, but I was so anxious every time I went there because they were counting all the times I said, they wanted me to be a very specific way, and it didn't feel like myself. So when my mentor said, Gary, you should take an improv class, I immediately thought, well, I'm not funny. Like, why would I take an improv class? And that's just silly. But I did it anyway. Matter of fact, I almost didn't go to the class, to be honest. It was on a Monday. I'm at work and I'm really busy. And again, this is considered play. Like, oh, you're going to go to this. Yeah. But I had all this work to do. I'm glad I did. Because I go to this class. It's at this theater here in San Diego. And I was really nervous because I didn't know anyone in the class. It reminded me, the first day of school. It's a new school. You don't know anyone. That's how it felt like. Oh my God, are they going to like me? And like all those feelings were coming back. But I went to this class. There were 16 of us total, and for 2 hours we played these silly games. They were just weird, like weird and fun. But for 2 hours, I didn't think about my to-do list. For 2 hours, I was completely present. I was having more fun than I had in a long time. And then afterwards, I went home, went to sleep, and then that next day was an amazing day. Like, wow. I just shrugged it off, like, fluke, whatever. But that next Sunday, I was excited. Most people have like the case of the Mondays where they're like, oh my God, I don't want to go to work, all this other stuff. Me, I was like, oh my gosh, improv class. I'm so excited.
I'm happy it was on a Monday.
Right? Of all times, like to have a class, it was on a Monday. Like it was so amazing. And so I went to this improv class. And what ended up happening was I started taking some of the improv games and bringing it to my team. And I worked in a very stressful environment. If you've ever worked at an agency, like one of the things they have, like #agency life, it's like one of those things where if you see shows like Mad Men, it like looks like,
I was just thinking of Mad Men because of advertising.
Yeah, like cocktails and all these things. And like, we do have some perks, like we get to like wine and dine clients, but for the most part, especially at a digital marketing agency, it's hard work. Like we're working long hours sometimes. And it, like I said, I just thought that was the norm. But the cool thing is I started bringing these games and we started playing like one of the games that I love to play is a game called One Word at a Time Story, where as a collective group, we will get like all these people in a conference room and we'll get a weird topic of a name of a story that doesn't exist. And then we will start with one person and they can only say one word at a time. And collectively, we tell a story. And it's a story that no one would have imagined telling, but sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But nonetheless, we are bonding with each other and we are connecting. And there's just something about play. And for me, and going back to the whole thing about burnout and stress, is that the work didn't get easier. The work was still challenging. The clients didn't get nicer. However, my perspective changed. I realized that, I do need to rest. And I realized in order to be an amazing employee, I thought you just had to work your butt off all the time, every day, always. But I realized that was just my own insecurities. And I realized a really good employee is someone that is not working late all the time. If you're working late all the time, you're pretty much going to give the perspective that you're not good at your job. Because a good employee is going to get their job done in an efficient amount of time and then go home and do other things. Now, you're not going to just ignore everyone else. You're going to check in with your boss and like, hey, look, I'm done. Boom, boom, boom. And also another thing that I learned is how to delegate. How to trust that my team, if I give them a task, just because they didn't do it the way that I would have done it, it's still good. And so in these moments, like I realized like, I'm putting this stress on myself. And that just helped me just release a lot of that stress. And like I said, the improv class, that was play for me. And it just helped me loosen up. But some people, that's not play for them. And I read this amazing book by a gentleman, his name is Dr. Stuart Brown, and it's called Play. And there's a subtitle or whatever. But basically, there's a big ball on it. But he talks about when we grow up, we play because that's what kids do. And if you think about how you used to play before the age of 13, whatever that is, and we most likely don't do that now because we grow out of it. But if you can bring that back some way into your life, you will get an immense amount of joy. And it turns out that we are wired to play. The kind of species that we are, that most animals or mammals or whatnot, they actually keep playing well into their life. But us adults, we stop. If you would think about any sort of animal in the wild, they only do what is necessary for survival, right? They don't do anything superfluous because if they do, they may die. But they play. And when you play, it actually allows you become very vulnerable. But they still play because they see the benefits of play. They see play as something that is going to rejuvenate them. Play as something that's going to help them sharpen their skills. Play as something to help them connect better with other people. So they do it because it's necessary. Us adults, we forget and then we stop. No, it's one of those things. It's a practice where, because it is not a normal thing, you know, that I'm used to, and I've been, I have years of not playing. I have to remember, just like meditation, like it's an ongoing practice, and so sometimes I find myself in stressful situations and I forget how to play. And so what I've been working on now is trying to spot it sooner, because there's always some sign. And a lot of times, for me, being an older person, like if I start feeling like some pain and stuff in my back, that is the early signs that I've probably been sitting too much. And I'm trying to recognize those signs as like, oh, got it. Need to make time for play. I have this phrase: when you're in the picture frame, you can't always see the picture. So I would advise all students to have I call it a playmate, but an ally, a buddy, someone that you trust, that can call you out in a loving way. And you have like a code word of like, hey, if you say this, I have to trust you, and you have my best interests at heart, and let's do something to shake it up. Because a lot of times, myself included, I get in the zone and I don't realize, like, oh, I'm sort of going to cause myself stress, because you just don't realize it until it's too late. And then you're like, oh, yep, that's true. But yeah, I advise, who's your playmate. This is a true, like, for I'll give two stats that are one for the beginning students and one for the students that are about to graduate. So for the beginning students, this is a true fact. Your success in college is determined on how well you can find true relationships, like deep relationships, someone that you can trust. If you cannot cultivate those, you have a less chance of succeeding in college. It just blows my mind. You could be the smartest person, but if you do not find those like ties, those strong ties, people that you can trust, that have your back, that you can like turn to, you're not going to do that well. And so that's something that is essential. And then for the people about to graduate, I know you worked your butt off and you worked hard, and your GPA is probably like amazing or not. It depends, but you've been working hard. But guess what? And colleges probably don't want me to say this, but your GPA and your grades are going to have very little impact on your success down the road. It means that if you look deeper in it, like, it means that you are able to learn, you're able to adapt. However, you cannot just rest on that. You cannot go into a job in this day and age and say, hey, look at me, I was on the dean's list, that and the other. That's great. That's something to be proud of. However, it is your ability to be creative that is going to help you in this complex, uncertain environment that we're in.
And ability to work with people. And,
yes,
right?
and not be a jerk.
Yeah.
And as someone who hires people, I look at that, but more importantly, I ask some questions of like, hey, what's a big failure that you had that you learned from? Because I have this belief, and you can quote me on this,
okay,
that failure is just feedback. And if you see failure as just feedback, you're going to take more risks. You're going to put yourself out there, and you only failed if you didn't learn something from it.